y'all, welcome back to my channel, Designs by Key, and today we'll be making the off-the-shoulder crop. This is the perfect top for those who have never made a garment before, or if you're new to making anything top down. And because it is so simple, it's also the perfect base if you want to get fancy, you know, and make your own design. And today I'll be making a 2X or a 48-inch bust, but I will also include the directions for sizes extra small through 5XL throughout the tutorial, so don't worry, I got you. And if you're a written pattern person, check the link in the description for the free written pattern. And don't forget to subscribe, turn on those notifications, and like this video. Let's go ahead and get started. For this project, you're gonna need some worsted weight yarn. I just used some leftover yarn that I had in my stash. An H 5.0 millimeter hook, some scissors, a couple stitch markers, a needle to weave in those ends, and optional, a measuring tape if you plan on doing a custom top. And let's go ahead and jump right into the tutorial. So we'll be starting with a half double crochet foundation chain. And if you need a little bit more help with foundation stitches, I will link a video that I made about them in the description. You want to start by placing a slip knot on your hook, and be sure to leave just a little bit of length on your tail because you're going to use that to kind of sew up a gap that's going to be on the back panel later, and I'll show you that a little later on in the video. You're going to chain up 2, yarn over, go into the second chain from the hook, draw up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 1. That creates a chain. Yarn over, pull through all 3. That creates the half double crochet. So for the next stitch, you're going to yarn over. You're going to find that chain that you just created, and you're going to go right under that chain. There should be 2 loops. Yarn over, draw up a loop. Yarn over, go through 1 to create another chain. Yarn over, pull through all 3 for another half double crochet. And you're going to continue this for the number of stitches for your size, and I'll put that on the screen here. And I'll meet you back once I finish my foundation chain. All right, so I finished up my foundation chain. Now I'm making a 2XL or a 48-inch bust, so I have a foundation chain of 126 stitches. And one thing I did forget to mention, if you are making a custom top, maybe from someone's measurements, this chain should equal their bust measurement when stretched. So you want to stretch it all the way down your measuring tape until you get to the appropriate size, and be sure to stretch it out because you want this part to fit snug around the shoulders. But let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, so once you finish your last stitch, you just want to go ahead and form a ring with your chain and be sure that it's not twisted. And you're going to go ahead and find your first stitch, and you're going to slip stitch it together. Pull it tight just to be sure it's fully connected. And you see that little gap at the top right here? That's where you're going to use your tail from your starting chain to kind of sew that together so that's not there. But you can do that later on. Okay, so once you have your ring, you're going to chain up 2. That does not count as a stitch. And you're going to half double crochet in that same stitch that you slip stitched in. Then you just want to half double crochet all the way around the loop. And again, be sure that your ring is not twisted. Finishing up my last couple stitches of round 2. And you're just going to slip stitch to the very first stitch of the round. And chain up 2. Right. So for the next 4 rounds, so round 3 through round 6, you're just going to chain up 2 and half double crochet around and slip stitch to the very first stitch. So I'm going to finish up to round 6, and I'll meet you back for the next instructions. Finishing up my last 2 stitches of round 6. I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch to the very first stitch of the round and fasten off. And you should have something that looks a little like this. And it will curve up, and that's completely fine. And now we can go ahead and move on to separating the armholes. So you just want to line up your work and be sure that that seam is in the very middle, as centered as possible. And I'll go ahead and do one of the armholes with you. So you're going to count in the number of stitches for your size, and I'll put that on the screen here. And for the 2X or the 48-inch bust, I'm going to count in 15 stitches from this edge, and then I'm going to place my stitch marker. Be sure that you're starting with the stitch that's on top, not on the side or on the bottom. So I'm going to start here. Right. And once you've counted in for your number of stitches, you're going to mark the stitch on the top that you counted, as well as the stitch directly behind it on the back part of the panel. You want to mark both of those stitches. So for me, I had to count in 15, which is right here. And I'm just going to place my stitch marker here. You can use two separate ones or put it together. I'm probably just going to put mine together. All right, and once you've placed your stitch marker, you should have something like this. Again, I used one stitch marker just so you can kind of see exactly what the armhole will look like. And you want to do the exact same thing on the other side, and we're going to move on to the next step. All right, so I've marked off both of my armholes, and now we can move on to the chain. Now this chain is going to be the start of the body portion of your work. So you want to start by attaching your yarn to the front stitch that's already marked. All right, and once you've attached, you're going to chain up the number of chains for your size. Be sure to chain loosely, and I'll go ahead and put the chain counts here. And once you've made your chain, you're going to slip stitch to the back marked stitch. And once you've got that slip stitch, you can go ahead and fasten off and cut off your yarn. And once you've done that, you should have something that looks like this. You can leave your stitch marker in or take it out, totally up to you. But go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so once you've finished up both sides, you should have something that looks like this. You have your sleeve extensions, and I went ahead and took out my stitch markers. If you're making this for yourself, this is a great point to go ahead and try it on to be sure that this part fits around your shoulders the way you want it to, as well as be sure that your armholes fit the way that you want them to as well. And now we can go ahead and move on to the body portion. All right, so you want to go ahead and flip your work over so that way the back seam is facing upward. And we're going to start at that same place where you fastened off before. So go ahead and attach your yarn, and you're going to chain up 2. You're going to half double crochet in that same place that you attached. And then you're going to half double crochet all the way up to the point where your chain connects, including the stitch where you actually made the chain. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. All right, so I finished up my half double crochet right before the stitch that has the chain attached. You're going to go ahead and half double crochet in that stitch as well. All right, so once you've done that, you're going to half double crochet in every chain. All right, putting a half double crochet into my last chain on this side. And you're going to half double crochet in that same stitch where the chain is attached. And then just continue half double crocheting along the row. All right, so I've reached my other chain, and you already know what to do. You want to half double crochet in that same stitch where the chain is attached, and then half double crochet in every chain. Working my last chain, you're just going to half double crochet in that same stitch where the chain is attached, and then continue half double crocheting across. And once you've reached the end of the round, we're gonna do things just a little differently. I know normally we would just slip stitch and chain up 2, but we're gonna work in continuous rounds. So we're not gonna slip stitch. Instead, you're gonna go right back into that very first stitch with a half double crochet. And you're going to continue half double crocheting all the way around. And each time you get back to the beginning, you're going to just half double crochet into that very first stitch. Now what you want to do before you get too far along in the round is you want to put a stitch marker in that very first stitch. And you want to do this for every round so you know exactly where your first stitch is. And again, we're going to work in continuous rounds of half double crochet, and I'm going to continue until my top measures from top to bottom 14 inches. And I'll put the suggested lengths on the screen here for your size. But of course, this part is totally up to you. If you want a longer top or a shorter top, that's totally up to you where you stop. But I'm going to continue with my continuous rounds of half double crochet until I get to 14 inches, and then I'll come back and show you how to finish it off. All right, so I'm coming up on the last few stitches of my last round on the body, and I just want to show you how we would finish it off when you're working in continuous rounds. So here you see I have my very first stitch of the round marked, and I'm down to my very last 2 stitches. This first one, you're going to work a single crochet. The last stitch, you're going to work a slip stitch. And into that very first stitch, that stitch that you have marked, you're going to work a slip stitch there as well to finish off the round. And you can go ahead and fasten off and cut your yarn. Once you've finished with your body, you should have something that looks a little like this. From here to here, the very bottom, that should be your desired length. And this is a good time to go ahead and try it on, just to be sure. And you can always reattach your yarn to add more length if you need to. And now we're just gonna do a slight edging around the armhole. All right, so for the armhole edging, you wanna start on the bottom portion of the sleeve at the very first stitch. So don't start in the corner, but start at the very first stitch on this bottom portion of the sleeve. And go ahead and attach your yarn. And you're just going to chain up 1. You're going to single crochet in that same stitch. And you just want to single crochet across up until you get to the corner, and I'll show you what to do there. All right, so once you've single crochet all the way across the bottom portion of the sleeve and you get to this corner, there aren't any defined stitches, but it gets a little muddy in this area. So you're just going to insert your hook wherever you can. And you're going to single crochet 2 together in that area. So just find 2 areas and do a single crochet together. And now you're going to continue with single crochet across the top portion of the sleeve and do the same thing when you get to this corner. All right, so I'm coming up on my other corner and I'm just going to single crochet 2 together. And then just slip stitch to the very first stitch of the round. Fasten off and cut your yarn. Right, and your sleeve should look a little something like this. At this point, you want to go ahead and finish up your other sleeve, weave in all of your ends, and we are done. I absolutely cannot wait to see all the different variations of the off the shoulder crop. Be sure to tag me on social media at Designs by Key so I can see what you guys come up with. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss what I have coming next. Thank you so much for crocheting with me. Until next time.